As Sarah said, I'm a psychologist. I've worked in this area for 20 years. But I've been on both sides as an academic and as a practitioner. And it's a very interesting space to work in. The introduction was deliberate in terms of talking about the money involved in this industry. And the gap between the money and the science is huge. Massive. And it's something that I really want us to discuss and work through today. The brief for today was that it was a TED-type talk. And so for those of you who are familiar with TED, it's about ideas worth spreading. And so I want you to listen to what I'm saying and be critical. This is a real opportunity to be critical. And I think this is an industry to be critical of. And this first slide that I've got up here is the current state of psychology. It's in real disarray. If you type psychology and replication, all of these articles will come up. This has been coming up over the last probably 2 weeks. Major study came out looking at trying to replicate psychological findings. So you hear finding X done by person Y. It's all fine until someone tries to replicate it. Those findings very rarely get replicated. And what this study looked at and demonstrated was that about 2/3 of those findings could be replicated. And psychologists often like to talk with tone of voice that makes it sound like what we're saying is very accurate and pure and spot on, and we fall back on our titles, coming back to the point that you were raising before, of doctor this or whatever. But the reality is far less sexy. And our ability to replicate in psychology is difficult. Our ability to predict human behaviour is inherently difficult. And this is something that always amazes me when people fall for the dribble of the marketing. See, I'm too colloquial as a New Zealander, right? You always have to catch myself falling into slang. But of the dribble about how predictive these tools are and the way that they're sold as marketing tools. What amazes me is that people know in their general life that human behaviour is hard to predict. They know that. They've all been let down by other people. They all know how many decisions they've made about someone and it hasn't gone quite right. Then all of a sudden, they think this tool is going to give them all of the answers, or even some of the answers. Does that mean we chuck the baby out with the bathwater? Does that mean that they are totally useless? No. And where I want to get to today is to try to talk about and get to a place where we can use these things with an evidence base. We can be critical users. Edison. Would we have been able to find someone like Edison through a psychometric tool? Or let's take a more contemporary example, Steve Jobs. These guys wouldn't make the cut. You would give them a psychometric tool and you'd say, no way. Bully, aggressive, blah, 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 blah. Overly tenacious, doesn't know when to give up. There's a whole raft of things that you can see the HR department saying right now, right? Because they're, oh look, see, he's outside the curve. Now they're not wrong. The HR department's not wrong when they're doing that. Or the decision makers are not wrong. It's just understanding what these tools do. They're far better at screening out than screening in. And that's one of the things that we're going to talk about today, which is how to use these things and how to understand how to apply them. The inherent problem is that thing there, the human brain. The person whose brain that is, they themselves often don't know what's going on. So to think that they're going to be able to describe their future behaviour is a big call. This is a very, very complex thing. You put that, the previous speaker, I enjoyed a lot of the points that were made. You put that in a situation and this thing is very adaptable. There's also a lot of plasticity to it. It changes, it molds. You know, we're talking about this incredibly complex operating system that we're only just starting to come to grips with. So psychology is a new science, it's a new discipline, it's finding its feet. Psychometrics just means metrics applied to psychology, just a measurement applied to psychology. When I'm teaching, I teach at NTU and SIM in Singapore, and I tell my students to forget about measurement because it's not really measurement. It's the weakest form of measurement. You know, it's an attempt at trying to measure something. Trying to measure it and give it a quantity, you know, 2 points of this, it's very, very difficult. So what are the top 3 myths in our industry? I really want to make sure that you've got lots of take-home points and lots of things that you can then argue with me about. But you've got take-home points. The first one, that this is a transactional service. This is not a transactional service. Transactional service, by that I mean that you can do a test, you get a result, and you get somebody telling you what this person is going to be like. Bollocks. That's a transactional service. It is not a transactional service. And one of the things that I really like about Q2 and all of the work that you guys are doing is that you understand an integrated model. You understand that all of this stuff has to be integrated into a larger system. To make this not a transactional service, you need to be thinking, how does this tie to my training? How does this tie to my performance? How is this going to tie to the team that this person's going into? What's going to happen post this? And how am I going to use this data down the line and model this data back to see what really works and what doesn't? Because there are so many folklores that people use when they're looking at psychometric tests. They go, oh, we need this type of person. That simply don't hold up when you do the in-house research. And so few people do in-house research. You're going to have a far more integrated selection system to be able to even get close to trying to predict performance at any power. You know, and there are test providers that will say, we predict performance. It's simply on the page. That personality testing is the most predictive form of testing. Again, this is not the case. So if we are to put all the different tests together, personality testing is our most powerful predictor. Cognitive ability is, and the research is very, very clear. And we're going to look at that very shortly. So how do we make things work through an evidence base? So there are 3 myths. And now what we're going to do is say, well, okay, how do we make this work from an evidence base? So I'm not here to rip the whole thing out. That would be pretty silly, you know, for myself, and that's my business, right? What I'm trying to do is get it in the right perspective. So what is an evidence base? Well, the first thing is we need to have realistic expectations. And it's pretty straightforward. Start with some realistic expectations about human beings. They are unpredictable, volatile, they do things that you don't know about. There's a whole raft of stuff, right? They can change in different situations. Their life changes, and then that changes what's going to drive them all of a sudden. They have midlife crises, decide to dye their hair, buy a motorbike. You know, there's a whole raft of things that happen. And if we can have realistic expectations about what we're trying to do, which is predict human behaviour, that's a really good start, because then we're not going to fall for any market. You know, because we don't have to, you know, I know the entity that we're trying to work with here, this human beings. Secondly, understand the difference between screening in and screening out. They are 2 different things. Screening out is a lot easier than screening in. Finding your high performers, that's hard. Finding your lemons is a little bit easier. Psychometrics is really good. Not really good. It's not so bad, it's better at the whole screening out than it does that well. And it can be done really cost effectively. And you can screen out relatively well. And screening out is a game of probability. When you're doing selection, it's a game of probability. None of you have a crystal ball. You might think you've got crystal balls. You might think that you can see the future. You might think that you understand human beings perfectly well. And everyone you meet, you know they're in a dark secret. It ain't the case. So what a psychometric tool does well is it plays the probability game. And so from a screening out perspective, yeah, you can do that to a greater or lesser extent, depending on how well we know each other. Screening in much harder. Finally, systems thinking. Don't see the psychometrics as a standalone thing. It's part of a system. You've got to understand the system. People say to me, oh, I used to do this psychometric system, and you see this person was, conscientious and was going to stay and they left. Well, what's up with that? And look, boss was a prick. That was what was wrong with it. I told you what this person was, but they went into a system which was, that's out of my control. It's not. You've got to understand it inside that entire system. You've got to understand it in terms of what's going to happen once they get in there, how we're going to manage them, how we're going to motivate them, what training is going to be provided. And then start to tie this all back in terms of big data plays if you've got big enough organisations. So looking at the data and then saying, well, these are the types of people that we brought in, these are the types of people who are successful, what's good, what's not. Those 3 points will stop you making poor decisions around psychometrics. Now, just some, I won't call them truths, but just some points of note as we start to wrap this up. 1, the best predictor is cognitive ability. Now, that does not mean that being brighter is better. This is the mistake that people make when they hear this. They go, okay, I've heard this whole cognitive ability thing means that therefore brighter, yeah, you're going to be better performer. It's not the way to interpret it. The way to interpret this is to say there is a cognitive load that every job has. So every job has a cognitive load. Some jobs have a high cognitive load, some a low cognitive load. We need to understand what that cognitive load is. Then we need to have a cut score, like a minimum score. But if you don't get over that, it means that you're unlikely. Remember, it's probability. It's not that you are, it's about probability. And when I've got to make a selection decision, if I'm hiring someone and I'm hiring them, paying them $100,000, staying for 5 years, that's $500,000 decision. So at the end of the day, I've got to do as much digging as I can, but it's going to be, I've got to play the probability game. And so that's where cognitive ability is powerful, because it helps you decide, okay, I'm making this $500,000 decision. Does that person have the cognitive grunt for me to feel comfortable that they're going to be able to do this job well? And it's not necessarily just doing the job well. It's the ability to pick up the learning required to do the job well. And that's what the research is very clear on. All jobs are, to a certain extent, repetitive after a while. But it's how quickly can we learn? How quickly can we pick up the nuances? And how quickly can we move from being rote learners to being able to apply what we know? So cognitive ability, that's a very powerful part of the equation. If you are going to use personality, I think there's lots of good reasons to use personality, especially as part of the system. Conscientiousness is another powerful screener in terms of screening out. And again, it works exactly the same way. At a probabilistic level, if you've got someone who's conscientious, and conscientious just means hard-working, perfection-orientated, attention to detail, a whole raft of things. There's a whole lot of facets underneath these things. People talk about these big 5 traits, but there are facets underneath them. Again, if they've got those traits, probabilistically, they're going to be easier to manage, they're going to be here on time, they're going to do what say they're going to do. That's essentially what the trainers need. So from a screening out perspective, it works quite well. But again, we've got this problem in that if it's too extreme, perfection orientated, they can't get out of the detail, we're in a VUCA environment, how do we work with conscientiousness? So it all depends on the job. When we're getting into the personality stuff, this all depends on the job. Assess for emotional resilience. And again, psychometric tools, good at screening out, not so much as powerful at screening in. And when we talk about this, at a big 5 level, people talk about it being neuroticism, some people call it emotional intelligence. They all fall into this sort of area of emotional resilience. And if you can find people that are more emotionally resilient, then they can go through the changes of the environment that they're in. You know, so if someone said to me, look, I could only use 3 things, they would be my 3. And the rest of the personality stuff, you really got to understand the job. You've got to understand how does this fit into the job. So things like extroversion, things like openness to ideas, and all of the facets underneath that. The relationship is not as clear cut. So you really need to understand the job, and understand the job well. And so often, I've seen people not understand the job. They've got an ideal of what they think the job is. Often the incumbents are the ones that really know the job. They know what's going on. We might have a vision about where we want the job to go to, but what is the job required about? And then tie the psychometrics to other parts in the system. You train and you eat this poor foods, it doesn't have the effect. If you're not sleeping, you're not getting the recovery. It's the system that gives you the result, not one intervention. That's the problem, is that so many people look at the psychometrics and go, oh, cool, I've got my psychometrics. A lot of companies love to tick these boxes. Oh yeah, got my culture survey, choice. Got my psychometrics, choice. Got my structured interview, choice. Are they using it in the way that it's, have they thought about it in terms of this? No. But I've got it. I can actually point and say, look, I'm doing this. You know? And you've got to be thinking about this in terms of a system. It's got to be part of the system. Okay, that I think brings us to the end.